And it's just an immense honor to be able to be supporting Dan, to be able to endorse him formally. And I think he's somebody that I will be proud to vote for and see as my state representative next time around. And with that, I just wanted to introduce you, Dan.
Thank you, Paul. I've got big shoes I'm trying to fill. Paul has done an excellent job for the district. Paul has been, as he said, an independent voice for this district. And that doesn't necessarily mean independent as Ross Perot was an independent, but independent of the machine that drives Beacon Hill right now. I grew up here in Holliston. My dad grew up here in Holliston, and my grandfather grew up here in Holliston. He was born on Mechanic Street in Mudville in 1900, and he lived in the same house his whole life, 26 Mechanic Street. So I've got real roots here, and I care about the town, I care about the district. But more to the point, I care about politics and government. I was Governor Romney's deputy legal counsel, and I was Kerry Healy's chief of staff. And so I had the great privilege of being involved with quite a lot of things in the State House at a high level, and I saw how things work. More importantly, I saw how things don't work. We need to build a contrary voice in the State House, whether that be Republicans, whether that be genuine independents. I don't know that it matters so much. What I do know is what is happening in the State House week after week is, not to get melodramatic about it, but it's undemocratic. And the best example, and the one that I give all the time, and the one that not too many people recognize happens, this year, when the budget debate began in the House, they passed a rule to govern the terms of debate in which it said literally debate will take place in caucus chambers, so very literally behind closed doors. And they went behind closed doors for hours and hours and hours on end, came out and voted. Went back behind closed doors for hours and hours and hours on end, came out and voted. So it's all out of the public eye, and behind closed doors what happens? Well, this year, as the budget process started, it was estimated that the state was $1.3 billion in deficit going into the budget process. So you would think responsible legislators would go behind closed doors if that's where they're going to do things and figure out how to get us out of that $1.3 billion deficit. But that's not what they did. Instead, they added $220 million in additional spending on top of that. And there's a reason for that. That's so that in the election year, legislators can go back to their districts and say, look what I got in the budget. Didn't I do a great job? On background, some members of the Senate have discussed with the State House News their prediction that they will come back in November for a special session to deal with spending cuts. Now, why, oh why would they come back in November to deal with spending cuts? You can bet it'll be after the first Tuesday in November. But that's a cynical way to govern. It's cynical and it's arrogant, and it presumes that you're not paying attention or that you don't care. You can change that dynamic simply by being willing to stand up and point to it and draw attention to it. My best example of that, and it's a very, very tangible example, and quite frankly, it's an experience that, had I not gone through it, I wouldn't be doing this, was some of you may remember in 2005, there was an enormous legislative fight over a piece of legislation that came to be known as Melody's Law. It was drunk driving legislation. We had some of the most lax drunk driving laws in the country, in this state. And I had some experience prosecuting drunk driving cases before I came to the State House. And I had the great privilege of working with the team that wrote Melody's Law. I was a primary author of Melody's Law. And that piece of legislation was stonewalled when we first introduced it in the House. We were told there was no way it was going to pass. We were told every year the governor puts forth drunk driving legislation, and every year it doesn't get out of the Judiciary Committee. We had the great fortune to have a man named Ron Bersani, whose granddaughter had been killed by a drunk driver, who was willing to give up his time and come to the State House and walk around with myself and a couple other staffers to individual legislators' offices and say, here's what we're doing, here's why. You can get a lot done by pushing hard and never stabbing people in the back. And that's my approach. Ultimately, we had an enormous legislative fight over Melody's Law. It was on the front page of the Globe and the Herald for a week run in both papers. And in the end, we passed that bill. And a year later, there was a big Globe headline about how drunk driving deaths on the Commonwealth's roads had plummeted in that year. And that was a tremendously gratifying feeling to think, through some effort that I was privileged to be a part of, there are people walking around now who otherwise would not be walking around. Another thing that I believe very strongly is that in this state, one of the big problems, other than the enormous imbalance, is there are too many legislators who get elected and then their entire purpose in going to work every day is to hold on to that seat. It's all about the next cycle. It's all about not rocking the boat. It's all about pleasing leadership so that they can climb the ladder, so they can get a better committee assignment or, frankly, a better office. I'm not looking to do this to put down roots and do it for my whole life. I'm doing this because I honestly believe that I can make a difference. I honestly believe I've got some experience that's relevant. I've got some ideas that I think need to be heard. And I'm very, very fortunate to have a family who supports me in wanting to do this and is willing to give up time and put up with some, well, actually, this might lessen the ranting at home a little bit, because that was another motivator for me. When Paul told me he wasn't running, I thought, well, maybe this is a put up or shut up juncture for me, because I do a lot of talking. You know, my political coming of age was the end of the Dukakis era. And people, I'm sure people in this room remember, but a lot of voters seem to have forgotten what happened the last time we had total one-party control of this state. By the end of the end of the second Dukakis administration, the state's bond rating was in junk status. The state couldn't borrow money. And how did they get there? They borrowed too much and they spent too much. Well, this year, Governor Patrick has proposed $20 billion in bonding. And they're spending money out the nose. We're already $1 billion projected deficit for next year. And, you know, some of these causes, they make sense on paper. And I can remember running for my homeroom presidency in 5th grade, and the girl I was running against got up and she said she was going to get longer recess and better food in the cafeteria. And I remember thinking, she can't do that. They're not going to fall for that. But then Governor Patrick stands up and he says, we're going to get universal pre-kindergarten, and we're going to pay for everyone to go to community college. We're going to pay for education from kindergarten through college. How are you going to pay for it? I've appointed a blue ribbon commission to come up with ideas how to pay for it. That's it. Now, if I came home and said to my wife, we're going to go on a vacation around the world, or we're going to take a private jet and a yacht, and she said, that's great. How are you going to pay for it? And I said, I just want to get your buy-in to the concept. We'll figure all that out, you know, after we buy the tickets. That wouldn't fly. That's not how you make plans. But it's a different way of thinking. And frankly, that way of thinking dominates Beacon Hill right now. The notion that, you know, we'll deal with the bills later. But you know what? We deal with the bills now. We're paying the bills now. Property taxes are going up. Gas bills are going up. Income tax is going to go up, I guarantee you. You know, that just a couple weeks ago, they raised taxes on business in this state by almost $500 million. It was very quiet, but they did it. They raised taxes on cigarettes.
I vote kids.
You voted, of course you did. Of course you did. All this. We're not bashing all over the legislature. I'm not talking about this. They raised taxes on cigarettes. They raised fees on gun owners. Now, you understand why they do that. First they came for the cigarette smokers, then they came for the gun owners. But you know, sooner or later they're just going to come after everybody because they keep spending it. I'm going to win this by meeting as many people as I possibly can and hopefully making a favorable impression. That's what it's about in a district like this. It's about shaking people's hands and asking them for their vote. And that's what I'm doing. And I hope I've shaken all your hands. And if I didn't ask you for your vote yet, I would really appreciate your vote and your support. Thank you so much for coming today.